Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Smart Naruto Got Harem with Anko, Yugao, Hinata and Kurama, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto nodded. Hi sensei, according to my two senseis in Kenjutsu, who grade and supervise my training only as I am studying a form they are not practiced in, they gauge my skill at low chunin from my spars with them. I also study taijutsu under them both and I am already fluent in the academy-style stances and forms. Naruto said with a smile before continuing. Fuinjutsu, as I mentioned, is a rarely practiced skill, so I have no sensei in that and I am self-taught following the guides and such available to all. It is gauged on a level from 1 to 10 in skill 1 being a beginner and 10 being a seal master. The guides have their own grading criteria that is to pass a certain level you have to be able to create such a seal within such a length of time, graded by that way I am at 3, though Hokage-sama had my seals sent to a specialist to be examined and he finds them at the silk level of 4, I have just started book 4, intermediate 1. Iruka's eyes widened slightly hearing that and had a smile on his face. That's very impressive Naruto for someone starting the academy without a clan. Who are your senseis? Naruto bowed. My apologies Iruka-sensei, but I am not at liberty to give their names as their teaching and grading me is an ongoing S-rank assignment, and as such not to be discussed in detail without the Hokage's presence or permission. Iruka blinked hearing that. S rank was the highest level a mission a shinobi can be given. His senseis must have been either Jonin rank or higher to receive that kind of mission, but just what about it made it S rank? Teaching a single student couldn't be any higher than a C or B rank mission, C being the more likely, unless the Hokage wanted to give the senseis a way to hide their identities to avoid threats to stop and given that Naruto was the container of the Kyuubi that was more than likely. Iruka nodded accepting the answer and was about to say as such when Sakura interrupted again. What a load of rubbish, why would the Hokage assign a clan-less orphan dope like you two sensei before you even joined the academy? Stop lying. If anyone should have that is Sasuke-kun. She screeched. Again everyone winced from the loud screeching, Naruto and Kiba held their ears again, Akamaru followed suit wincing in pain. Shaking his head again Naruto now had a splitting headache, and it wasn't even lunchtime yet. I have no reason to lie Haruno-san, nor did I. You are more than welcome to ask Hokage-sama of the existence of such an assignment to prove that, and might I request for the sake of mine and the rest of the class's hearing that you stop yelling. We are in training to be shinobi, we are meant to be quiet, he said calmly, before fixing her with a glare. And call me that again and you will find out just what a clan-less orphan dope can do to you faster than you can blink. The glare made her shiver and the threat and the tone it was made in made everyone bar Iruka. Mizuki and Sasuke gulp scared slightly, Iruka raised an eyebrow at the threat, while both Mizuki and Sasuke had the same through, yay right. Iruka cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. That's enough, now let's get back to events. Can anyone here perform any jutsu, any at all? Two hands raised up. Naruto and Sasuke both looked at each other. Sasuke had a look of surprise not expecting someone not from a clan to know jutsu but brushed it off thinking it was just something small nowhere near what he could do. Seeing both boys raise their hands, Iruka nodded, not shocked that Naruto knew a jutsu given that he had training. He was bound to have been taught something and was interested to see what the blonde could do. Alright then, Sasuke you can go first if it's an offensive jutsu aim it down range at the target, if not, then step out where everyone can see and have at it. Sasuke nodded and walked up to the firing line and shot through several hand signs while taking a deep breath, before calling his attack, Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release. Great Fireball, as a fireball the size of a large dog shot down range before engulfing the target dummy and catching it on fire. Mizuki quickly put it out with a bucket of water. Iruka nodded. About what you would expect from a Uchiha, a high fire affinity, he shows promise. Seeing the jutsu have the class broke out chanting Sasuke's praise, the Sasuke Uchiha fangirls. Sakura being the loudest of them all. Whoa, that's it Sasuke, there no way Naruto Baka can beat that. She got multiple glares from the non-cheering side of the room. Obviously, the Naruto fangirls all glaring bullets at her for calling Naruto that and insulting him earlier. Naruto rubbed his brow, his headache growing even worse. Iruka-sensei, are we allowed to perform multiple techniques if we know them, and they won't be shown in the other tournaments? He asked. Iruka thought for a moment, before nodding. I don't see why not. I assume you want to show off some of your kenjutsu and fuinjutsu as well as your ninjutsu. Naruto nodded. Also, I would ask that you order that the fuinjutsu part not be removed until the end of class, as I can guarantee that it will be of benefit to everyone in the class. Iruka nodded again. Very well Naruto, if I think it will be of benefit then it won't be removed until the end of the day, and if that is the case I will ask that you use it daily for our classes then. Naruto smiled. That's alright sensei. The seal I'm going to be demonstrating can be activated and deactivated remotely, he said as he reached into the storage seal on the inside of his trench coat and pulling out a bottle of chakra ink and a brush. Dipping the brush in the ink for a split second, the blonde then disappeared, making everyone look around trying to find him. Suddenly a loud "eep" came from Sakura as she turned around, finding Naruto grinning at her. She put her hand to the back of her neck and blinked when she felt something. She was about to yell when Naruto raised his hands in a ram sign and channeled chakra into the seal. What the hell was that, Baka? She said in a normal voice. She blinked, and so did everyone else. No yelling, she spoke normally. It's a sign of the apocalypse, a Haruno speaking normally. Naruto smiled. That's better, isn't it? And to answer your question, Haruno-san, I have applied a simple volume control seal to the back of your neck, just behind where the voice box would be located. Simply put, when activated you will be unable to yell, and will have to talk normally, which I can assume that everyone here is happy about, given that their ears won't be ringing because of your banshee or howler monkey yelling. I don't yell like a howler monkey, and I'm no banshee. Sakura argued, looking like she was trying to yell. Naruto smirked. Well, now you aren't, but don't worry, I'll deactivate it now, but yell again, and I'll activate it again, until the end of class. Sakura glared at Naruto angrily. She knew just how to respond to this. You had best remove it, otherwise I'm going to tell my Ka-san you put a seal on me. She's on the council and you'll be in a load of trouble, and they'll make you take it off. Naruto shook his head. The council doesn't scare me, Haruno-san, and neither does your banshee of a Ka-san. They are the advisory council. They advise the Hokage. They don't pass judgment, so it's up him should I remove the seal, though I doubt he'll argue against it given how the fact that classes will go a whole lot smoother without you disrupting lessons with your screeching, isn't that right, sensei? Iruka looked to be in thought for a moment before nodding lightly. Deactivate the seal, Naruto, but Sakura, he is allowed to activate it should you yell again. If you don't want that, I suggest you refrain from disrupting the class. I will speak with the Hokage myself and recommend the seal only be activated under certain situations, and deactivated when you leave the academy. Sakura looked shocked. She would have thought their sensei would have been the voice of reason and had the Baka remove it, not use it as her muzzle. Now she would be completely under Naruto's whim. Whenever he wanted her to shut up, he just had to activate that damn seal on her neck. Naruto smiles and walked up to the firing line. That was my fuinjutsu. Now here's my kenjutsu, he said as he gripped his Bakken. The resistance seal activated at its highest level as always as he pulled it free, muttering the attack as he went. Uzumaki Kenjutsu, crescent slash, and in a single horizontal slashing motion, a chakra blade was sent down the range, cutting 3 practice dummies in half, but the attack didn't stop. It shot on and meet the tree line and finally stopped after cutting down 5 trees, letting them fall with a massive crash. Smirking, Naruto returned the Bakken to its holder. While he looked at all the shocked faces behind him, well, half the class was in shock, the other half was cheering for Naruto. For some reason Naruto rubbed the back of his head. It felt good to hear people cheering for him. Iruka blinked, seeing such power that was definitely Chunin level if not higher. Naruto was definitely not lying about his skills, and looking closer at the Bakken Naruto had used, he could tell it was solid chakra metal, with various seals on it. that couldn't have been cheap, which prompted the question where had he gotten it from. Sasuke was seething. How the hell did this dope get this much power? It should be his, he was an elite, that power should rightfully be his as an Uchiha. Then he spotted the Bakken, that weapon that must be where the power is. I will have it, I will have that power. Naruto smirked, turning back to the target area. Now I believe since Uchiha-san did a fire jutsu for his demonstration, I will also. Good thing I asked Gigi for permission to use it once for just such an occasion. Naruto drew back his hands as he focused his chakra into them, remembering his training. He had created an extra 300 clones, after his first demonstration of the jutsu, and he and them had spent the rest of that day refining it and getting it under control by firing the attacks into the air. He had mastered it to an extent that something really cool happened when he was preparing to attack. In a flash, both Naruto's hands caught ablaze but didn't burn. Iruka was about to rush to him thinking the jutsu had gone wrong, but then Naruto brought his hands together in front of him in a clap, calling out the attack. It was barely audible, Uzumaki Kaden, Kasai Hakushu no Jutsu. Both hands met and an explosion of flame streamed out of them. The flames were so intense the rest of the class had to shield their eyes. Compared to the demonstration a few days earlier, Naruto had refined the attack a lot. The stream of flame was much more controlled and narrowed, as well as being hotter, meaning it scorched the grass beneath it after a single second. Naruto kept the attack going for several seconds before canceling it to view the results. A line of scorched grass and earth stretched down the firing lane, and at the bottom was the remains of the target dummy, now charcoal. This time, there wasn't an applause, there wasn't even a, "What the hell?" It was just stunned awe and shock at what they had just witnessed, that continued on for a few seconds before Iruka snapped himself out of it. Naruto, what jutsu was that you just used? I've never seen it before, he asked, now slightly scared where the boy had learned such an attack. Naruto grinned. It's called Kasai Hakushu, and according to Hokage-sama it is an A-ranked ninjutsu. I actually had to ask his permission yesterday to use it here. He forbid me from using it outside of training until I was genin, or it was a life or death situation. It's the only fire jutsu I currently possess. Hearing Naruto's explanation, Iruka officially had his mind blown. An academy student, a Nun clan member academy student, pulling off an A-ranked jutsu on his first day at the academy. Just what the hell kind of training has this boy's senseis been teaching him? Sasuke had his fists clenched in anger now. How the hell? That jutsu was 10 times as strong as his jutsu, and it had taken him weeks of practicing to get it where it was, and then this clan-less dope comes along and makes his work look like nothing. What the hell is going on here? The jutsu, that's got to be it. It makes sense, it's just a stronger jutsu than the one I'm learning. I'll just have to take it from him along with that weapon of his. With both them I'll become strong easily. I'm an Uchiha, all jutsu belongs to me and me alone. He was about to approach him then and there and demand them both, but suddenly half the class, Naruto fan club, from this moment on will be known as NFC, rushed Naruto cheering at his jutsu and how strong he was. They swarmed the young blonde while trampling right over Sasuke like he wasn't even there. But when they crowded him, the blonde disappeared in a swirl of red leaves, making them all fall flat on their faces. Both Iruka, Mizuki, Sasuke and everyone else saw this and looked around wondering what happened. Iruka blinked. Shunshin, that's a Chunin level jutsu that requires a high level of chakra control. How? Scratch that, I'm not even surprised anymore. Everyone was still looking around for Naruto. When they all heard someone clear their throats, they all looked to where it came from, and Naruto was sticking to the wall of the academy by his feet, looking down on all of them. Looking for me. Every member of the NFC had heart-shaped eyes, while Sasuke and Mizuki looked on, glaring at the boy who just seemed to get stronger and stronger. Iruka looked up at the boy. Naruto, come down, we're about to start the throwing tournament, he called up. Naruto nodded and pushed himself off the 2-story wall and did a mid-air somersault and channeled chakra into his legs to stick the landing with ease. Walking past, he and Kiba bro-fisted with a smirk. Nice one, dude. Kiba smirked at him, giving him a friendly slap on the back. Naruto grinned. Thanks, but just wait, you've seen nothing yet. Everyone retook their positions as Mizuki came out of one of the storage sheds carrying 6 crates of kunai and shuriken. Setting each down, the students were told to form into a line and their marks would be graded out at 10 shots. Each of the clan students went first. Shino threw his 10 and hit 6 of each. Choji threw his 10 and hit 5 of each. Kiba threw his 10 and hit 5 of each. Shikamaru threw his 10 and hit 6 of each. Ino threw her 10 hit 4 of each. Hinata threw her 10 hit 7 of each. Then Sasuke threw his 10 hitting 9 of the targets with a smirk. All the others from civilian families threw theirs, but none for more than 3 except for Sakura, who pulled out 4 matching Ino's 4, and the Enigma Sai hit 5 in each matching Kiba. Finally it was Naruto's turn to throw. Walking up, he lifted a single kunai and shuriken out of the crates like the others had, not wanting to use his own. As he did so, he closed the boxes, making Iruka raise an eyebrow. Naruto, don't you want to take the others out before you close them up? A few others snickered, thinking Naruto was an idiot. Guess who? Naruto simply smiled. No need to worry, sensei, 1 of each is all I need. Iruka was about to say something, but before he could, Naruto hurtles both projectiles down the range. As they flew, Iruka looked to Naruto and his eyes widened when he formed a hand sign. No way, he knows that jutsu. In 2 puffs of smoke, both kunai and shuriken multiplied into 10 and hit each of their targets dead on, the kunai embedding into the target's head, the shuriken into where their hearts would be. A perfect 10 for 10. The targets were only half the distance away that he was used to, and standing still, it was child's play for him. This, of course, got another round of cheers from the NFC and glares from Sasuke and Mizuki, who continued to glare as he walked down range to retrieve the kunai and shuriken thrown. Iruka cleared his throat again. Alright, it's time for the final part of today's events, the taijutsu tournament. You've all already been paired up, so follow me to the sparring ring and we'll begin. Everyone followed Iruka as he leads them to a raised ovular platform 10 centimeters off the ground with a white oval ring painted on it a meter in from the edge, the platform itself being 6 meters in diameter. The rounds have been arranged so you're fighting people with the same gender. It will be this way until you reach the 2nd year, where you will be expected to be able to have the skills to fight as equals. For fairness sake, now the first match will be. The tournament began. Each of the clan heirs faced civilian children in the first round. No surprise, they all won. Sakura even pulled out a win, and Naruto won in 2 hits, the final being a jab to the back of his opponent's neck when he overreached himself. Round 2 began with Shino versus Shikamaru. After 2 minutes, Shikamaru surrendered, saying it was too troublesome to continue. Round 2 was Kiba versus Choji. Kiba won by holding out longer than Choji and using his speed to dodge the big boned boy's attacks. Naruto had to fight another civilian student. This time, he simply hit him with a single punch, knocking his opponent out of the ring. Needless to say, the NFC was loving their idol winning his matches effortlessly. Sasuke had done the same, only his attack was a roundhouse kick to his opponent's head, knocking them out of the ring and knocking the boy unconscious. On the girl's side, it had been Ino versus a civilian. Again, she barely pulled out a win, while it had been Sakura versus Hinata, and Hinata had decimated her with a flurry of punches, leaving the pink-haired girl on the ground twitching from the assault. She had been taken to the academy nurse for treatment along with the boy who had lost to Sasuke to check for a concussion. The third round with the boys had been Shino versus Sasuke. Shino put up his best defense, but after 3 blows he withdrew, claiming he was outmatched and taijutsu wasn't his strong point like the rest of his clan. Then it was Naruto and Kiba. The 2 grinned, facing each other in the ring. Kiba had let Akamaru sit this one out, wanting to spar with Naruto alone. The 2 went at each other ferociously, Naruto keeping up with Kiba fist for fist. Kick for kick. It was a mirror image. Actually, every time Kiba threw a punch, Naruto would swat it away. Every time he threw any attack, Naruto used the same appendage and moved to deflect it. After 10 minutes of continuous sparring, Kiba was beginning to lag. And Naruto took that as a sign to end the fight. In a burst of speed, he threw a punch at Kiba, aiming right for his solar plexus. Kiba saw it coming and put up his arms to defend in an X shape. The punch and Kiba's arms met, and the dog boy was pushed back a meter, flinching at the impact. Naruto was about to press the assault when Kiba raised his hand, calling his surrender, in a panting voice. Naruto stopped his fist mere centimeters away from Kiba's face. The dog boy gulped. Naruto removed his fish and held out his hand. Good fight, Kiba. Kiba sighed and took Naruto's hand. Yay, but you still kicked my ass, even when you're wearing those seals of yours, and kind of makes me feel like a chump. Naruto grinned. Sorry, it's not my fault that I kick so much. Kiba chuckled. Yay, right, just make sure you put on a good show when you fight the emo douche. Naruto chuckled evilly. Oh, he won't know what hit him. Kiba shivered slightly at the tone but nodded, grateful he wasn't the one in Naruto's firing line. He walked off stage getting a hand on the shoulder from Iruka, who knelt down to Kiba's level. What was that you two were talking about? What seals does Naruto have? He asked, concerned. Naruto knew about the Kyuubi, or worse, had told Kiba. Kiba rubbed the back of his head. A restriction and set of weight seals. Naruto is always training with them, and making the rest of us look like chumps while doing it. Iruka sighed in relief that it wasn't the fox they were talking about, but then Iruka grew curious. Kiba, just how much weight is Naruto carrying? Kiba was about to answer, but Naruto spoke first. 50 pounds on each limb, 100 on my chest, and a level 2 restriction seal, sensei. Iruka looked at Naruto when he heard him. That was 300 pounds, 136 kg. And a restriction seal that would only make it harder for him to move. With that kind of pressure, he shouldn't even be standing up right now. That would be like 2 or 3 full-size adults on him while he's trying to push his way through a swamp up to his neck. And yet he was moving with ease. No one had yet to land a single blow. Sighing, Iruka merely accepted it, making a mental note to ask Lord Hokage what kind of training this boy's sensei put him through. It was time for the final matches of the tournament. Ino had fought her way to facing Hinata in the last match, and on the boys' side it was Naruto versus Sasuke. Sasuke walked up onto the platform and smirked. This is a joke. These no way a clan less dope like you could ever hope to defeat an Uchiha elite like me, he said in an arrogant tone. Naruto smirked, shaking his head. Oh, is that right, Uchiha-san? I'll just have to prove you wrong then, won't I? Sasuke glared at Naruto. Impossible, dope, you can't win. You will lose like all the rest. Sasuke's fan club was swooning over his words and cheering him on to beat the blonde baka for even thinking he was at the same level. The NFC, of course, was doing the same in reverse, calling for Naruto to beat the duck butt emo into the ground. Both boys glared at each other as Iruka came onto the stand and looked between them both. Sasuke fell into his clan's fighting style stance, the interceptor fist, a mix between a boxer's stance and a martial arts stance. Naruto recognized it, having read up on the different fighting styles in the library. The interceptor fist was a solid style built up over the decades of watching others' styles and coming up with counters along with adding parts of them to the style. The style was a formidable one, but without the Uchiha Sharingan, it was only half as good. Naruto dropped into a solid stance of the Academy Taijutsu style, the basic fist, showing he was ready to fight. Naruto had studied the Academy style. It was a basic style with basic moves. Its stances were, like the name suggested, basic, filled with plenty of holes, but it was only used for students to give them a solid foundation to build upon when learning another style. It basically shows them how to throw a punch without breaking their fingers, how to block and deflect successfully, how to stand and throw a powerful kick, how to dodge and duck from high blows, and how to interoperate movements to tell what your opponent is going to do next. Naruto had a good grasp of it, so he wasn't worried in this fight even with his seals on. Seeing the boys fall into their stances, Iruka raised his hand and dropped it. Begin. Both boys glared at each other as Sasuke lunged for Naruto with a high kick. Naruto brought his arm up and blocked the kick. Before pushing the boy back, Sasuke landed and used the momentum to swing round and do a heel sweep of Naruto's legs. Naruto saw it coming as well and moved his foot adoringly, blocking the sweep with the bottom of his foot, and hooked the boy's leg the moment after and threw him over himself, landing face first. Getting gasps of shock from Sasuke's fan club and cheers from his own, Naruto smirked as he retook his stance, as Sasuke shot at him again, pissed that he had let that happen, throwing a left hook at Naruto. who intercepts it, grabbing Sasuke's arm and used his own weight to slam the boy onto his back as Naruto moved off with a grin like he was having the time of his life. More cheers from Naruto's fan club. Even Kiba was cheering. "Yay, get in there, Naruto, kick that pompous prick's ass." Naruto grinned, hearing that as an idea came into his head and he liked where it was going. Sasuke's world was starting to straighten up again after meeting the mat for the second time in the fight. This shouldn't be happening to him. How can some clanless dope do this to him, an Uchiha elite? He would beat him and make him pay for such an act. Using his legs, he pumped hard and threw himself onto his feet and turned to see Naruto in a different stance. It was like he was dancing on the spot. His entire body was moving, his legs stretching out behind him and his arms swaying wide as the boy kept moving. Then a thought crossed the Uchiha's mind. He was taunting him. That just pissed him off more as he rushed the blonde, but that was just what Naruto wanted. Pushing his way to one side, Naruto swung his right foot around at Sasuke's head, and blindsided the boy with the spinning kick that came out of nowhere, as it had just looked like Naruto had still been swaying. The kick connected with the side of Sasuke's jaw, knocking him out on his feet, but the kick didn't stop. Naruto's momentum kept him going as his foot swung round in a 360 as Naruto kept his momentum going for the same foot to swing round and meet Sasuke's face with twice the momentum of the first. The impact knocked the Uchiha off his feet and spun him, landing him flat on the ground out cold, as the momentum continued, throwing Naruto into a cartwheel before he stopped and stood up, looking down at the beaten Uchiha elite. It was complete shock from the rest of the class. They had never seen a kick like that before, neither had either of the Chunin instructors. They had just assumed Naruto was messing around, but then he goes and pulls off a set of kicks like that with such force and speed behind them they would have been impossible to predict. Iruka quickly snapped out of it and called Naruto for the victory, which was followed by cheering from the NFC while booing from Sasuke's side. Naruto just stepped out of the ring and onto the ground. Mizuki went to check on Sasuke while Iruka went to Naruto. "Naruto, that kick and stance wasn't part of any style I've seen before in the village or anywhere in the land of fire. What was that? It looked like you were dancing for a moment, a very weird dance at that." Iruka asked, confused. Naruto smiled. "It's a style I started learning after I got the academy style down with my sensei. It's based on rhythm and very powerful kicks. As you just saw, the stance I was in was called Ginga. It's the basis stance of the style. Most don't take it seriously as they find it confusing since it looks much more like a rhythmic dance step than an orthodox static fighting stance. But that's how it works, using momentum for power. The only problem with the style is that it requires room to build up that power. So if Sasuke had gotten in close and fast, I would have been in trouble. But that's why I have the academy style down as well, for when my opponent does get close, I change styles and really throw them off." Iruka was caught off by this. He had never heard of such a style or stance. Naruto was definitely right. People wouldn't take the style seriously until they met one of its kicks like Sasuke just had. "I take it each kick has a name then. What was the one you hit Sasuke with then?" Naruto nodded. "That was one of the more advanced kicks. It was called Meia Lua de Compasso. It's a rotation kick that uses the momentum built up from the Ginga for strength. If learned to an extent, it can be built on like my one was for an additional set of kicks. I added one for extra measure, though one seemed to do the job. You never can be sure." Iruka nodded, understanding Naruto's reasoning. "Very impressive, Naruto. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that style as you learn it." Naruto bowed. "Arigato for the praise, sensei," he said before turning back and walking back to the rest of the class minus Sasuke, who Mizuki had carried off to the hospital to have examined. Iruka then had gone to referee the match between Ino and Hinata, which was over as soon as it started. When Ino bad-mouthed Naruto, saying it must have been a fluke that Naruto beat Sasuke, Hinata saw red and knocked her out with a single strike, and Iruka called the fastest match in the academy's history, before dismissing them for lunch, saying the class positions would be given after. Naruto immediately took off with Kiba heading for Ichiraku's, knowing that Anko would be heading there also, and couldn't wait to tell her about everything that's happened so far. Boy, would she be laughing. Naruto pushed past the flaps on the way into the ramen stand with Kiba, both of who were laughing their asses off remembering how Naruto had kicked Sasuke like the little he was, that should shut him up for a while. Damn, and you say you still haven't mastered that style yet, remind me never to piss you off when you do, Kiba said laughing. Naruto patted his friend's back. Nah, no need to worry, I only reserve that kind of beat down to the like of Tem back there. Both boys laughed before sitting down. Anko wasn't here yet, but Naruto knew she knew this is where he would before lunch, so it was only a matter of time till she'd arrive. No sooner had he thought that had he felt something, or rather someone hugging him from behind. Evening Foxy-kun, miss me much? Spoke Anko's voice. Naruto grinned, spinning himself around on his stool as Anko took her seat on his lap, making him grin. You have no idea, my hubby Haim, he said before kissing her lips in a light pass, making her smile and lean into him as he held her. So you have much fun today. I heard someone made quite the spectacle in the tournaments for the new batch. That wouldn't be you, would it, Foxy-kun? Anko said teasingly with a very big smile on her face. Naruto grinned. Maybe, he said in a sing-song voice, teasing her back. I wouldn't really call it making a spectacle per se. I was just showing off a bit. I didn't even remove my weights for the taijutsu part, and I held back a buttload of chakra in the jutsu example. I wasn't even using a tenth of what I should have. Actually, Naruto-sama, you weren't even using a 20th of the amount. Your chakra control had improved greatly over the few weeks training. That's good to know, thanks, Akane-chan. Well, that's because you're a powerhouse. I doubt even that Uchiha could keep up with you, Anko said with a grin which fell when she saw both Kiba and Naruto chuckling like mad. What's up? Did I say something funny? Kiba laughed. Yep, Naruto made that Uchiha Tem look like a punk. He make his fire jutsu look like a firecracker compared to his own, beat the Tem at the target range with one of each projectile, and then put the Pompous in the mat twice before knocking him flat out for the TKO. Kiba said before he fell on the ground laughing his off. Hearing that, Anko burst out in laughter. Oh man, I wish I could have seen it. Okay, tell me everything and leave out none of the juicy bits, I want to hear it all. Naruto grinned and was about to speak when in a swirl of leaves an Anbu appeared wearing a white boar mask with a red streak down one side. Naruto recognized him as one of the 4 that usually guards the Hokage. Naruto grinned and looked to him. Evening Boar-san, I see you got a new uniform. What? Was pink not your color? I'm sure I could arrange for a bright yellow or maybe green next time, he said with a big smile, making both the others in the room roar with laughter again. Naruto and Anko had told Kiba about how he had turned half the Anbu pink with one of his pranks, and Kiba still laughed picturing the sight. The Anbu paled behind his mask. Please don't, Uzumaki-san, and I'm here on urgent business. You have been summoned to appear before the council immediately. You are charged with 2 counts of assault and 1 count of theft. This got all 3 of their attentions. Not yet being shinobi meant that such charges held a lot more weight to them than if they were shinobi, and who was Naruto meant to have assaulted and stolen from. Slowly Naruto sighed before gesturing Anko off his lap. She gripped his hand and he smiled at her softly. It's alright, hubby Haim, I'll see to this and see you at home. Kiba, mind telling sensei I could be later to class than expected if this drags on? Kiba nodded at Naruto's request. Sure dude. Just fill me in on just what the hell's going on later. Naruto nodded, and looked to Anko before giving her another quick kiss, brushing her hair back out of her face. See you soon, my Haim, he smiled before stepping back and disappearing into a whirlwind of red leaves, making the Anbu blink behind his mask and quickly following him. Just then Tuki came out from the back. Oh hey you two, I thought Naruto would have been with you, he said, confused he wasn't seeing his favorite blonde customer. Kiba shook his head and Anko sighed. You just missed him, Tuki Oji-san, he was just summoned by the council on trumped-up charges. Tuki looked at her, gripping his wooden spoon more tightly as he gritted his teeth, growling slightly. Rat bastards, he muttered under his breath before looking back to the ramen pots and taking their orders. When Tuki went into the back to start to make their orders, Kiba looked to Anko, and then a very evil idea crossed his mind. Hey Anko, I think there's something else you should know about class today. Anko looked to Kiba with a raised eyebrow. Like what? She asked curiously as to what it could mean. Scene break. Naruto appeared in the middle of the council chambers in his swirl of red leaves, causing many of the present counselors and clan heads to look at him. But a second later he felt a shiver go down his spine for an unknown reason, and then he gulped. I just got a very bad feeling a force is about to be unleashed on some poor academy students. Oh well, it's probably nothing. The room was a large and circular with a lowered middle flooring with a set of steps leading down. There were two curved tables on either side just before the steps behind which the counselors and clan heads sat on opposite sides. The tables were divided at both ends by a large gap. One side led to the large double doors into the council room, the other was the Hokage's chair. On the right side of the room was the easily recognizable civilian council, made up of the wealthier of the civilians, mostly those who run the market district, the banks, restaurants and other well-off the business of the sort. On the left were the clan heads, all of whom Naruto recognized. First from the Hokage's chair was top of the head of Shikaku Nara, Nara clan head, and father to Shikamaru Nara. He had two scars on the right side of his face which were probably his most noticeable feature. Like his son, he had dark hair tied up into a spiky ponytail, dark eyes as well as a goatee. His ears were also pierced. Like many of the clan heads he was an active shinobi and as so wore clothing of that of a shinobi. Shikaku wore a meshed shirt underneath his flak jacket, a deerskin coat over that and hand guards. And typical of that of the Nara clan was a genius but an extremely lazy one, so he tried to get as much sleep when he could. Next was Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan and one of the previous members of the Ino Shikacho formation. He was also a valued member of the Torture and Intelligence Division and the Hokage's right-hand man as Shikaku was his left. Inoichi was also a shinobi. He had long ash blonde hair reaching into his back, which he wore spiky on top and ending in a long ponytail, blue-green eyes and strong facial features, which included a well-defined jawline, wearing the standard flak jacket over a black outfit, complete with hand guards, forehead protector and a sleeveless red haori. Then was Choza Akamichi, a tall, plump man with long, spiky red hair and purple markings on his cheeks, wearing a samurai-style outfit which entails a black suit completed with armor that has the kanji for food on it. With the addition of a rope belt, hand guards, and instead of a forehead protector he wears a hachimaki tied around his head, as most chefs do, as one of the things Akamichi were known for was their restaurants. He also wore a pair of silver, hoop earrings. Next came Sume Inuzuka, and currently the only female clan head among the clans, but she was not someone you would want to mess with. She has an animalistic look similar to that of her son Kiba. She has long, spiky, untamed brown hair, vertical slit-like pupils, elongated canine teeth and nails. She also has the clan fang markings on her cheeks as well as markings over her eyes and a dark shade of purple lipstick. She wears the standard outfit of a Konoha shinobi consisting of flak jacket and a black suit underneath with the sleeves rolled up and bandages around her legs. Rumor had it that when it comes to men, the last one she literally made him piss himself after she found him sleeping around. The man was so afraid he fled the land of fire to keep the bits that made him a man. Naruto had the balls to ask if that was true when they met, and she laughed saying every word of it. Naruto made a point right there and then to always stay on her good side. After Sume was the more stoic face of Hiashi Hyuga, Hyuga clan head. He has long, black hair, and featureless white eyes like all members of his clan, who wield the Byakugan. He normally wears very traditional, loose-fitting robes with a long-sleeved, brown haori, as one of the wealthier of the clans, and the largest. Hiashi doesn't take on many missions, though Naruto has never doubted the man's strength in a fight. Naruto never really had a problem with the Hyuga clan. They were cold to everyone mostly except to those who earned their respect. Naruto had also heard rumors of the clan branding their branch members with a seal of some sort. He has heard the effects are rather unpleasant, but he has never seen it. And then finally came Shibi Aburame, head of the Aburame clan. Like all members of his clan, has his eyes obscured by dark glasses which feature a single tassel hanging down from one side. He has very spiky short black hair and a mustache and wears a high-collared outfit. Truthfully, the Aburame kind of creeped Naruto out with their bodies filled with bugs, just the thought made Naruto squirm. Appearing in the room as he did got a few raised eyebrows at the fact that someone that just started the academy that day knowing a Chunin level technique. Naruto quickly glanced around the room as soon as he arrived, and one thing that he noticed was that the Hokage wasn't present. Naruto's eyebrow twitched ever so slightly, noticing that. Great, so I came here when I didn't need to. Naruto let it slide and then grinned. Maybe I'll have some fun. Should be interesting. Evening all. Naruto said, grinning. So someone mind telling me why I was called away from my girlfriend when there was no need for me to even come? This got some raised eyebrows on the clan's head side, and Sum just chuckled, imagining Anko wouldn't take kindly to the interruption, while over on the civilian side they were livid. Brat, you would do well to show us the respect we deserve. We are the council and we should be treated with the utmost respect. Especially from low-class shit such as you. The clan heads all shook theirs, hearing their civilian counterparts rant and rave at the young blonde, who just crossed his arms. Naruto smirked a bit. Oh please, I respect those who have actually done something to earn it or hold a position of power that they don't abuse. Such as the clan heads and the Hokage, they have my respect, and who I answer to. I do not and will not answer to a fat-ass bunch of decrepit old senile civilians who just because they believe they hold a grain of power in their hands believe they have the right to abuse it as such. You civilian counselors make me sick. How dare you, Anbu, kill this demon brat now, he cannot speak to us like this. Screeched a woman with long pink hair as she pointed at Naruto, eyes filled with rage. Both Naruto and Sum flinched from the vocal assault. Naruto responded first. You ignorant banshee bitch, last I checked the shinobi and Anbu only follow the Hokage's orders. You cannot command the Anbu like your playthings, they have no obligation to listen to your orders, same as me. The only reason I came here was because I was told I was being brought up on charges of 2 counts of assault and 1 of theft, but seeing at the Hokage as the only one who can formally bring those charges against me, I see that I was misinformed, so care to explain why I was called here? Naruto said, not missing a beat. This got some shocked reactions from the clan heads and a few raised eyebrows. This was news to them as well. Sum started growling. What bullshit is this? We were informed that the Hokage had important matters to discuss. What's this about charges? Naruto looked to her. Not a damning clue, though I suspect these diskless shits over here know. Naruto turned to them and glared at them, and they returned in kind. How dare you, brat? We are the council, and you have committed crimes against this village. You attacked 2 citizens and stole from one of them. A fat shopkeeper barked. Naruto scoffed. Oh really, they tell me you piss, and if I'm being brought up on charges I'm assuming that you have the warrants for my arrest and detainment, signed and sealed by the Hokage. If not, that means your charges are false, having not been brought to the Hokage's attention. Naruto glared but then smirked. But I think I humor you. Just who was I meant to have attacked, and just who have I stolen from, and what have I stolen? You know full well, demon. Screeched the pink-haired woman. Both Sum and Naruto flinched again from the loud noise. This time, it was Sum to speak first. Will you shut up? Yell like that again and I'll come over there and cut your banshee voice box out, you bitch. She yelled as she exuded killing intent, making the pink-haired woman cower. Naruto was rubbing his ears, making the ringing stop, before shaking his head. Ah, I see what going on here now. Fair enough, he said before looking to the corner in the shadow. Neko-chan, would you mind go informing Hokage-sama that there are some matters that are in need of his attention in the council chambers? The cat-masked Anbu stepped out of the shadows, and nodded. Very well, Uzumaki-san. She responded, as she was about to shunshin to the Hokage's office when one of the other civilian counselors stood up and started yelling. Hey, how come you listen to what he says and not us, the council? There were a few hidden laughters coming from the shadows in the room and even a slight giggle from Neko before she responded. Simple councilman, we respect Uzumaki-san, unlike you lot. She said before disappearing in a swirl of green and purple leaves, leaving the civilian council members gritting their teeth in anger. Naruto smiled before walking to the center of the room and sitting down. Now, time to wait. So Sume-san, how things been at the Inuzuka compound? I haven't been by as few days. Sume grinned. About as well as can be expected, Gaki. Training the new pups for the next generation is always slow. What about you? How was your first day at the academy going? Naruto smirked before putting his hands behind his head and lying back on the ground. It was going great up until 15 minutes ago. We wrapped up the demonstration and tournament part of the day. Target practice was good. But they could do with increasing the target distance. I'm used to throwing twice the distance at moving targets. If I remember the scores correctly, Shino got 14 out of 20. Choji got 10 out of 20. Kiba got the same. Shikamaru surprisingly hit 12 out of 20. Even though he seems to have about as much will to participate as you do staying conscious, Shikaku-san. Naruto chuckled along with a few of the clan heads as the half-conscious Nara just waved him off, head still down on the desk. Ino got 8 out of 20, same with her pink-haired counterpart Haruno, which isn't good. Inoichi-san, you need to get that fangirl out of her. Inoichi frowned hearing that. I've tried, Naruto, but the girl is like her mother, stubborn, and she's a teenager, which is even worse. Naruto nodded in understanding. Well, she was just above average. The civilians hit about 6 or less. Naruto then looked to Hiyashi. You should be proud, Hiyashi-sama. Hinata scored highest from all the kunoichi and even matched Shino with 14 out of 20 hits. Hiyashi blinked once and nodded his head. Thank you, Uzumaki-san. I will be sure to congratulate her, he said with a nearly unnoticeable smile tweaking his lips. Naruto saw it and smiled back before continuing. Of course, the oh-so-great civilian part is probably wondering what the Uchiha got as well. No shock it was high, given how many hours he likely trains. He scored 18 out of the 20 possible hits, making him the highest in the class. Naruto grinned cheerily as pleased smirks came to the counselors' faces before Naruto spoke again, or at least he was, until I beat him with a perfect 20 hits. That got a few smirks from the clan heads. Sume started laughing and pounding the table, the civilian side not so much. Rubbish, there's no way a clan-less orphan like you could best Uchiha-sama at anything. Quite lying brat. Like we would ever believe your pack of lies. Naruto shook his head as the clan heads sighed listening to them. Each of the clan heads had had dealing with Naruto in the past and knew the fact that he wasn't the Kyuubi sealed inside, though they weren't privy to the more delicate information that he had spoken to the Kyuubi, or that the Kyuubi was female and she was named Akane, and that she was actually controlled by someone with a Sharingan eye. But the majority of the clan heads liked Naruto. Hiyashi was on the fence about him, but he wasn't unfriendly with the boy and could see he was decent and he would side with him on most matters, but matters being as they are with the Hyuga Council breathing down his neck and with the state his clan is in, he can't anger them. Just as things were starting to get heated, the doors opened and the third Hokage walked in with Neko at his side. What is going on here? He asked in a rather angry voice. It was at that point Naruto kicked himself up onto his feet and turned to his surrogate grandfather with a grin. Oh, you know, the usual Hokage-sama, just the civilian side of the council overstepping their bounds, trying to usurp your power and charge me with false crimes, the usual BS. Hearing his surrogate grandson's explanation and seeing the looks of rage on the civilian counselors' faces directed at the boy, Hiruzen just sighed. Can I get a bigger headache? Let's get this over with then, but we will do this right. What crimes are you being accused of, Naruto? With a big grin on his face, Naruto chuckled. Why, 2 counts of assault and 1 of theft apparently, and I think I know the 2 who are charging me, so this shouldn't take too long, Hokage-sama. Hearing the charges, Hiruzen leveled his angry gaze on the civilian side of the council. Those are some serious charges, and there had better be some serious evidence to back them up. Seeing as they were never brought before me beforehand, they will be now. The Hokage walked to his seat before sitting down. So who is it that you are meant to have assaulted and stolen from, Naruto? Naruto grinned sitting down with his legs crossed, with a grin. Well, if my guess is right, I thinking it would be Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. As for the theft, I have no clue. At that moment the pink-haired woman again rose. Aha. So you admit to attacking my daughter and the great Uchiha-sama, it's a confession. Naruto and Tsume covered their ears as did a few others. The banshee was screaming louder now. The Hokage glared at the pink-haired woman. Counselor Haruno, you would do well to remember to speak in tone and in a reasonable tone at that. Any further outbursts and you will be removed from council chambers for the remainder of the meeting. Gulping, the pink-haired woman quickly sat down but still glaring daggers at Naruto, who had just finished rubbing the new ringing out of his ears before speaking. No, that was not a confession, it was just a guess considering who is present in the room at the moment. Naruto then looked over at another shadow. You two can come out now. As Naruto spoke, two figures came out of the shadows, Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto held up his hand as if to say, and there you have it, before grinning. Now shall we continue to these apparent attacks? Once again it was the Haruno Banshee to the screeching. You branded my daughter with a seal and attacked Uchiha-sama while his back was turned. My daughter witnessed it. And the mini Banshee couldn't help herself. That's right, that baka you hurt Sasuke-kun. Now the clan heads, Anbu, Hokage, were wincing from the vocal bombardment, thinking these girls had to have weaponized their vocal cords, that or it was a bloodline limit of some kind that had no point. Everyone now nursing serious migraine groaned as they rubbed their ears except for Naruto. Tsume looked to him and raised an eyebrow. How come you aren't affected now? Naruto grinned as he reached up to his ear and pulled out a red earbud with some seals on it. Sound filtering earbuds. I put them in just before. They come in handy for such occasions. Won't let any sound in over a certain frequency. I designed them walking to lunch before coming here. Figured they might come in handy. Boy, was I right. The clan heads, Anbu and Hokage, all had two thoughts. Smart bastard, and, can he make me a pair? Naruto grinned. Now, let's sort out these charges. The easiest way would be to call Iruka-sensei as he witnessed both of these supposed attacks. The Hokage nodded and gestured to Neko, who nodded before disappearing in another shunshin, returning seconds later with a serious-looking Iruka. Hello, Iruka-sensei. My apologies for dragging you away from class, but some matters have come up that we need you to clear up, Naruto said as he stood up. Iruka nodded and looked to the Hokage. I will answer any questions given to me, Hokage-sama. The Hokage nodded in thanks. Thank you, Iruka. Now Naruto here has been charged with multiple crimes. The two in question at the moment are 2 counts of assault, and Naruto believes you bore witness. Naruto nodded. Iruka-sensei, did you see me apply a seal to the back of Sakura Haruno-san's neck, during a demonstration of my skills earlier today? Iruka nodded. Yes, I did, along with the rest of the class. I was going to be seeing about meeting with Hokage-sama later today after class about arranging for it to be permanent until she leaves so as to benefit the entire class. This got a few blinks from the clan heads as to just what this seal was, if it benefited the class so much for the class sensei to ask for it to be made permanent for the girls' time at the academy. The Hokage stroked his beard for a second before chuckling. Naruto, is the seal in question the one I am thinking of? Naruto grinned. Yes, it is. Gigi, if you would like, I would give a demonstration to the council as to how the seal was applied. Though to make them feel safe I would ask that the ink is mixed with your chakra so as only you can activate it. The Hokage chuckled. Very well, Naruto, he said as he gestured for the boy to come to him as he took out a kunai and pricked his finger as Naruto held out a bottle of plain ink catching the chakra-filled blood, before capping the bottle and shaking it to mix the two together as the Hokage healed the small cut with a small medical ninjutsu. Naruto then took out a brush and smiled. Do I have your permission to apply the seal, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen smiled. Go right ahead, Naruto. Naruto smiled back as he dipped his brush into the ink and disappeared into a blur. Before anyone could react, the elder Haruno screamed as she felt something touch the back of her neck in shock. She turned quickly to see Naruto grinning at her before disappearing and reappearing in the center of the room again. Seal had been applied, Hokage-sama, if you would. The Hokage nodded, and formed a hand sign just as the Haruno woman got up. How dare you touch me, filth! I will see you hang for this travesty, demon, you hear me, you? The Hokage channeled chakra and just like that the seal activated. Will pay for this with your life, demon. The entirety of the room was silent for precisely 3 seconds after that, in shock at what had just occurred, but then the entire clan head side of the room broke out in celebration. Praise Kami, it's a miracle. The banshee has been silenced. No more screaming, the screaming has stopped, hallelujah. It's a gift from Kami-sama, praise the boy. Naruto had to sweat drop at seeing grown men weep with happiness, and seeing a few of them get up and dance was hysterical. Naruto even saw Hiruzen muttering a silent prayer of thanks which made him chuckle. Before the old man cleared his throat. Alright, that's enough, he said as the clan heads settled down. The seal applied to both women hold no threat to them, and I hereby order that they remain and only activated at certain times, such as when in meetings and at the academy. It will save many people's eardrums. Not screeching this time due to her seal, the older Haruno spoke. What? You can't do that. This has got to be a breach of mine and my daughter's rights. Hiruzen fixed her with a glare. May I remind you, Lady Haruno, that this is a dictatorship. Not a democracy. I can do what I please. I wear the hat, not you. And as for your rights, what of the rest of our rights not to be deafened by your yelling? I believe speaking in the norm may be beneficial to all at those times when the seal is active, and to add to that, as the seal is non-attacking, there is no assault here, so that is one count of assault off the table. Naruto cleared his throat at that. You may as well strike the second count for the Uchiha as well. If it's the one that caused him to be treated at the hospital, it wasn't an attack, and it certainly wasn't when his back was turned. It was a sanctioned sparring match in the tournament for the first day, and how the younger Haruno-san can even testify to this count as confusing as she was in the medical office after being knocked out in her previous fight, so she wasn't even there to witness the rest. I'm sure you can verify this for me, Iruka-sensei. Iruka nodded to Naruto's request. Yes, I can. Sakura Haruno lost in the second round of the tournament when she faced Hinata Hyuga and was beaten in 10 seconds with an instantaneous blow, resulted in her being knocked out and taken for medical attention, and did not return for the remainder of the tournament. Naruto's and Sasuke's match was in the finals of the tournament, which lasted for 3 minutes, in which Sasuke met the mat twice in a row before Naruto switched fighting styles to confuse Sasuke and then delivered a set of kicks that knocked Sasuke out for the win. It was all witnessed and sanctioned. No assault took place. At this point, both Sasuke, Sakura and the civilian side were fixed with glares from the clan head side. Not only had they tried to pin phony charges on Naruto, they had done so around the Hokage's back and tried to do so with a false witness, which were bordering on crimes themselves. Had they actually succeeded, that was, unfortunately, there was no crime for the attempted part. Hiruzen finally sighed. With the overwhelming evidence against this charge is dropped also, there was no assault here either. Now let's get on with this final count so we can get this meeting over with. Just what has Naruto stolen, and from who? At this point, an elderly woman on the Hokage's left side stood up. Naruto recognized her as Kaharu Udatane. Her gray hair is pulled back in a twin bun locked by a traditional Japanese hairpin with 2 pearls dangling off the side, wears a simple long kimono, closed by an obi, a jacket, and a sash over it. Her eyes are always squinting, barely opening her eyes at any point in time that Naruto has seen her. It has been reported that Uzumaki-san has stolen both a Kaden fire jutsu and a training weapon from the Uchiha clan resources. The objects and jutsu in question, he blatantly used to destroy part of the academy training ground. It is asked that the weapon is returned and reparations are made for the jutsu stolen, on top of which extra charges be applied for destruction of Konoha Shinobi Academy resources. She stated, not missing a note. A few of the clan heads raised an eyebrow at that. Those were serious allegations. Stealing clan jutsu and property were serious offenses, and using them to destroy parts of the academy was also a punishable offense. A few looked to Naruto, whose fists were clenching as he looked to be furious with anger. This wasn't missed by the Hokage, whose eyes widened, realizing that Naruto knew only one Kaden fire jutsu and only one weapon that could have done damage like that, and he was now livid also at what the Uchiha was claiming and that it was an outright lie. Naruto sighed as he released his anger, and then a slight smile came to his face. He was going to slam this back in their faces and make them eat it. Oh, is that a fact, dear counselor? Naruto said sweetly with a very creepy smile on his face. Well, I'm sorry to say you have been blatantly lied to. Perhaps you should have checked your sources first, but then given your blatant hatred for me, it doesn't shock me that you jumped at the chance to try and have me punished for something that is so obviously a pack of lies. Naruto said in a sing-song act with a smile on his face that made a few of the clan heads blink and Hiruzen chuckle knowing what was happening. How dare you talk to me like that, brat? You will show the proper respect when addressing your betters, and how dare you call Uchiha-sama a liar when you are so blatantly flaunting the very weapon you stole, she snapped, angered by Naruto. Naruto smiled. Oh, you mean this? He said as he took out the bakken from his belt. I'm afraid Uchiha Tem must be mistaken, this is mine. Liar. Such a weapon is obviously too powerful to belong to you and so must belong to Uchiha-sama, spoke the Haruno who was desperately trying to yell. Naruto shrugged. Well, perhaps I am wrong then, he said as he walked over and set the bakken on the table, swirling it like it weighed nothing. How about this? If the Uchiha Tem can lift my bakken, he may have it. Naruto smiled. A few of the civilian counselors were grinning internally, thinking Naruto was a complete fool to give them this chance, as was Sasuke, who showed it outwardly. He would take the weapon and with it, its power, and then the council would have Naruto teach him that jutsu and he would be even stronger. Sasuke grinned, walking over and reaching out for the bakken on the table. He gripped it and went to lift, but as he did he found the bakken didn't even budge. The thing weighed a literal ton. Sasuke took it in both hands and tried to lift. Nothing. He put his foot on the table, still nothing. He was pulling as hard as he could and still nothing. What the hell was going on? Sasuke kept pulling at the blade for the better part of 2 minutes, all the clan heads sweat dropping at the sight. Well, Sum was rolling on the ground laughing. Hiruzen couldn't help but smirk slightly, while all the civilian counselors looked on confused as to what was going on. After another 10 seconds, Naruto had enough and mentally removed his permission to allow Sasuke to tough the bakken, causing the practice blade to flare its stored chakra at the handle, throwing Sasuke back, his hands burned by the chakra. The civilian counselors were wide-eyed at that and immediately reacted. How dare you attack the last Uchiha demon? He booby-trapped the blade. Arrests him. They began yelling, making Naruto sigh, shaking his head, but the yelling was stopped when the Hokage flared his ki. That's enough. Naruto did nothing of the sort. He barked, getting their attention, and Naruto was right when he said you have been lied to, as all the facts stated are false. Danzo looked to Hiruzen. I take it you have proof then, Hokage-sama, of your claim. Hiruzen nodded to Danzo. I do. The bakken is made of 100% pure and refined chakra metal, filtered and hardened to perfection, no flaws whatsoever. The entire process of refining the metal took 3 days and nights. The molding took another day and night before it was sharpened and polished for Naruto. He placed the order for it several days ago at Shinobi Arms, where Daichi Oshiro filled the order. Such a piece of craftsmanship cost 9,020,084 yen, which Daichi agreed to have paid off in weekly installments. A few of the clan heads blinked, hearing the process such a weapon would cost a lot, and the price was no shock to them. But what confused them was why Daichi would arrange for such a payment method, but none spoke up. So you don't have to convert. 9,020,084 yen is about 50,000 British pounds or 75,000 US dollars. I was there when he placed the order and picked it up. I was also the one to apply the seals onto the piece to better its performance. That bakken has no connection to the Uchiha clan whatsoever, and the claim that is complete rubbish. The civilian side of the council was completely furious. Not only had their plans been dashed, but their attempt to better the last Uchiha had been completely thrown on its head, but there was still the jutsu and the damage done to the training grounds. Koharu stood up. There is still the fact that he stole an Uchiha Kaden fire jutsu and used it to destroy part of the academy training grounds for no good cause. Naruto chuckled at that statement. Another blatant lie. Honest, you people really need to try something new, or at least get better at lying. Koharu was about to speak when she was cut off by the Hokage. Naruto is right, he only possessed one Kaden fire jutsu in his arsenal of jutsu, and it was not stolen. It was one of the 6 passed down to him as part of his parents' last wishes, and has no connection to the Uchiha clan either. Yet another lie. That statement got a few counselors' attention as Danzo spoke up. Hokage-sama, it was my belief that Uzumaki-san was an orphan and his parents were not known. Is that not still a fact? Hiruzen shook his head. No. His parents have always been known to me, but certain facts had left it that their identities have been declared an SS-ranked secret and I will not be divulging them as is my right as Hokage. You do not need to know and so you will not be told. Only myself and Naruto know who his parents are and you are not to ask. Doing so is violating shinobi law and is punishable by death for those who know not to ask. Do not push on this subject, he said, leaking killing intent, making all those in the room take his words very seriously. Kaharu cleared her throat. Very well, but he still. But this time Naruto cut her off. Oh, will you give it a rest already? You're about to say I still used it to destroy part of the academy training grounds for no reason, which is bullshit again. I used it with permission to demonstrate one of my jutsu as it's currently the one I have the most control over. Iruka-sensei can verify this fact, and Hokage-sama can also verify that it was the same jutsu used as I asked for permission the day before to use it due to the restrictions placed on me during its use outside of practice. This got some raised eyebrows also on the clan head side of the room. The Hokage placing restrictions on a justice use was a rare occurrence indeed and sparked a few questions, as Shikaku leant forward. Just out of curiosity, Uzumaki-san, what rank is this jutsu you know? For the Hokage to place such restrictions on you to do with its usage, what are the conditions of its use? Naruto smirked. It's not really shocking given its strength and my current non-shinobi status. The conditions state that I'm not to use it outside of practice or in any spar until I am genin rank, and in spars I am to keep its strength to a reasonable level. As for the justice rank, it's A rank, with the potential to reach SS rank if enough chakra is applied to it. In my training though I can push it to mid-S rank with protective barriers in place. Using it at the academy that time I toned it down to mid-C rank strength. This got a row of shocked looks from the clan side of the room. For an academy student to pull off such a jutsu was impossible, but then given that the boy was a Jinchuriki wasn't a stretch given how much power they contained, they could see why the Hokage had placed the restrictions as he had. Using a jutsu like in a spar before one became a shinobi would only be asking for trouble. Danzo's one eye was wide open hearing Naruto's words. Unlike the rest of the civilian side, he knew how justice were ranked in a jutsu with the possibility to reach SS rank, had the possibility to wipe out half the village in a single attack. At first he was all for some of the council's plans to have that jutsu taught to the Uchiha to better the village, but given the Uchiha's state of mind and the fact the jutsu was that powerful, such an act would only endanger the village, but it still doesn't mean he couldn't learn more about it. Danzo cleared his throat. This jutsu does sound very powerful, Uzumaki-san. I can see why it has such restrictions placed on it. Might I be so bold as to ask its name and its fundamental principles of performance? Naruto stroked his chin for a moment, thinking the request over, nodding slightly. I see nothing wrong with that request, but I would request that certain ears not be privy to such information, Naruto suggested as he gestured slightly to the emo and his pet monkey. Hiruzen nodded. I believe that would be wise also, he said before lifting his hand slightly as a signal as two Anbu appeared behind Sasuke and Sakura, quickly disappearing with them before they had a chance to protest. With a nod of thanks, Naruto continued. The technique is called Kasai Hakushu. Its general technique flows solely around that of chakra and elemental manipulation, storing up and compressing the Kaden chakra into the palms of your hands, while at the same time building up a protective layer of chakra on your hands so when the attack is released in the clap your hands aren't burned. It takes a few time to find the balance for the level of protection needed to keep your hands safe when using the jutsu. Too little and your hand will get burned, too much and you're wasting chakra, and that's never good in a long battle. Danzo stroked his chin. A jutsu that is completely chakra and elemental manipulation that requires no hand signs, just like the Yondaime's Rasengan, which was a powerful jutsu indeed, and the fact that the boy could perform it was a testament to his skill already. Very impressive indeed. Thank you, Uzumaki-san. Naruto nodded to the old bandaged man, seeing he currently held no ill intent, but that could change, though his attention was quickly drawn by the elder Haruno again. Brat, you will teach that jutsu to Uchiha-sama, he should have that power not you. She snapped angrily, not being able to yell. She was immediately fixed with a glare from the clan head side and the Hokage and even from Danzo at what she was saying, but that all stopped when Naruto snorted and began to laugh aloud. Ha 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 ha. That's rich, oh that is rich, you think you can order me to do anything, ha 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 ha, oh the irony of that sentence, you can't order me to do jack shit lady, and you know it. Naruto laughed, making the elder Haruno seething with rage. How dare you speak to me like that? I'm part of the council and you have to do as I say. She snapped angrily. Naruto shook his head along with that of the clan heads and the Hokage. Banshee-san, you are part of the advisory council, you advise the Hokage, you do not make demands, pass laws, give orders, or have any powers whatsoever. What you possess is a title, nothing more. The only people in this room who have such powers are the Hokage and clan heads. The Hokage runs the village and the clan heads run their clans, the civilian side does sweet all. You are a bunch figureheads that give the illusion of power, a load of ugly ones at that. The only power you have is that of what you believe somehow have come to possess in your head. Naruto chuckled. Sure, some of you have a business and certain pull with others, but compared to the Hokage who actually runs the village, you are nothing. Naruto said aloud, stating the facts as they were. This shocked most in the room. That fact was well known, that the council held no power, that only the Hokage did, that the council was only there to advise the Hokage about the many views so that he can make an informed decision, and the clan heads were his commanders in times of war, and in such times the civilian members weren't even privy to the meetings. Finally, Naruto sighed before heading to the door. Now, since all of the matters concerning me have been dealt with, I believe I will be heading back to. Oh crap, Naruto said, looking at the clock. It was well past the time where the academy had ended, and Naruto shook his head. Oh well, I guess the academy is out, I'll just head home. Oh, Iruka-sensei, just out of curiosity, where did I rank in the class ratings? Iruka smiled. Top of the class, Naruto. Sasuke took second after you. Hinata took first for the kunoichi, with Ino taking second above Sakura due to her going further in the taijutsu part than her, as this was just practical today, so congratulations. Naruto grinned and looked to the civilian side with a grin, told Yasuo. Each of the civilians was livid at this but dared not to voice their rejection in front of an already pissed off Hokage. Iruka then spoke again. But I think you might want to be careful going home, Naruto. There was an incident when class resumed and you weren't there, Iruka said with an embarrassed chuckle. Naruto blinked. Why, what happened? Iruka rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Well, I think you better ask Mitarashi-san about that. She was the one who tried to feed a large portion of the girls in your class to her rather large snake summons, while threatening to, and I quote, cut their tiny little titties off and ram them down their throats should they ever look at her man like that again. This got a blinking response from most of the listeners aside from a few. The elderly Hokage just sighed as he shook his head before tossing a small coin bag to Neko. You win this round, Neko-chan. The Neko Anbu smirked beneath her mask before pocketing the coin bag. As everyone's sweat dropped at the obvious bet. Naruto just sweat dropped and shook his head, before Sum started rolling on the ground laughing. Harem now, ha 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 ha, that's what's called staking your claim, Naruto, you lucky bastard. Naruto smirked. You don't have to tell me that, but something tells me we've got Kiba to thank about her finding out. I was about to tell her when I was brought here, so he must have spilt the beans. Sum smirked. Oh, I'm giving him a week off for that. That was genius. I just wish I could have seen it. Naruto nodded. So do I. Well, I'd better get going. I've got a snake mistress to reward, he said before disappearing in a leaf shunshin, leaving them with their jaws on the floor and Sum laughing. Harem. The sun is shown in the window of the Naruto and Anko's bedroom, illuminating through the bamboo blinds, as the two occupants of the room stirred from their slumber. Slowly Naruto opened his eyes as the sun's light shone in. He looked up at the ceiling and smiled, feeling Anko snuggling closer into his chest. It had been a feeling he had grown accustomed to over the past 4 years. Yes, 4 years they had been together now, and they were as happy as they could ever be. Anko had graduated from the academy 2 years earlier and she was now a chunin after passing her chunin exams her first time, and she was thrilled given that she and her teammates hated each other. It had been a miracle they had lasted in the field as long as they did. Now she was happy as a peach with her position in the T&I department. She signed on as soon as she became a chunin. They were required to pick a department to sign on to one of the divisions of the Shinobi Corps: the front line, trackers, T&I, medical, specialist or Anbu. Naruto just sighed contentedly as he wrapped his arm around Anko and pulled her closer to him before kissing her forehead. "Good morning, Haim," he whispered to her with a smile. She smiled, her eyes still closed. "Good morning, Foxy-kun." Naruto smirked as his right hand trailed down her bare back and slipped into her boxer short pajama bottoms and underwear, gripping her peach cheek, earning out of the snake charmer as her eye finally opened, giving Naruto a very seductive look. "MMMMH, very frisky this morning, aren't you?" she whispered as she kissed his bare chest that was chiseled hard from the years of training and intense practice sessions. "You excited about today? You can finally become a shinobi." Naruto palmed her cheeks before giving them a firm squeeze, making Anko gasp. "Yay, I am, but what I'm looking forward to the most is finally being able to show you how much I love you after I pass," he said in a husky low voice into her ear, making her bite her lower lip as she felt herself get wet at just his words. Due to the laws, anyone under the age of 18 wasn't legal in that respects, as they are considered civilians. The only exception to that law was if they became shinobi. Once a genin, they were fair game and free to live as they like. They were considered adults, which is one of the reasons the third Hokage had changed the graduating age of the academy all those years ago, so everyone was 16 coming out of the academy, and roughly 18 by chunin and 21 by jonin. It used to be they came out at 12 or younger before making chunin by the time they were 14, and then either jonin by 19 or they were dead, but that was the life of a shinobi. "That makes two of us, Naru-kun." Anko ed as Naruto rubbed her more and more. The mornings were always so fun. He would tease her and they would just lay there and hold each other, just lusting for more. It was torture, but they would soon see it over. Slowly Naruto's ministrations of Anko sheiks came to an end, much to her displeasure, as he slowly got up, giving her a very nice view. Over the years of training, Naruto had really bulked up. He had always tried his best to look after his body even before the academy, but now he looked like a proper hunk. Sporting a six-pack and no scarring, compliments of his fast healing, his body was pristine and the picture of an Adonis, enough to make any girl wet just by the sight of him without his shirt. He was currently wearing only his pajama slacks and smirking, hearing Anko, her lips looking at him as he stretched as he got out of bed. "Oh, I just can't wait to get a hold of that body. Hurry up and pass already so I can have you already," Anko whined playfully, making Naruto chuckle. "Patience, my Haim, I'll have you soon enough, and I'll make it worth the wait," he growled with a smirk, making her quiver under the sheets with anticipation before she got out. "You had better," she said with a smirk as she threw off the covers. Over the past 4 years she had filled out nicely. Training alongside Naruto had done its part too. She had filled out in all the right places and not an ounce more. She had perfect skin and a killer body. She had D-cup and hips to match, and that Naruto loved to slap when she shook it, teasing him constantly, and she always came back for more. She was wearing a small loose vest top stopping just above her belly button and very small pajama shorts showing off her long legs and making her look even wire. She had kept her hair the same length, short around her fronts with the longer back tied up in a bushy ponytail. She got out of bed and did her stretches, also making Naruto smirk as she stretched up, her top only just covering her bust as she did so. Naruto started to the closet to pull on his clothes for that day. "Better get dressed, Anko-chan, today should prove to be a good show." Anko smiled. "Goody, I can't wait to see you put the tem in his place again," she said as she came over and wrapped her arms around his waist. "If only I was a jonin, then I could request to have you as a student and then we could have loads of fun with that little idea," she said before blowing on Naruto's ear, making him smirk. "But Anko-chan, you know how it's you who loves getting spanked. You even bought that schoolgirl outfit and paddle for when I became genin, Naruto teased. Anko blinked. No, I did, Anko started but then stopped, realizing what he was getting at. You didn't, she then said excitedly. Naruto grinned like a fox. Yep, we are going to be having lots of fun. Anko blushed red just imagining what was going to happen later on. He knew all her little fantasies, and she knew all of his. Now normally she would be pushing for dominance, but with Naruto that wasn't an option. As her best friend Hana would say, he was alpha and that was final. It wasn't a secret that they were a couple. Anko had told her two best friends, those she had anyway, Hana Inuzuka and Kurenai Yuhi, and they had both given their blessings. Hana was Chunin like her, and had been Yugao's student when she was a Jonin. Hana had never pushed for anything higher than Chunin, though everyone knew her potential. While Kurenai had been lucky enough to earn a promotion to Jonin just a few weeks ago, so she would be getting a team come selection time. Both were a few years older than her, but best friends nonetheless. Both friends had seen Naruto and Anko together outside of training and put it together, and she and confessed to them. There had been months of teasing and there was still the odd jibe, but not that often. Hana was mostly like her mother Sum, brash, and was the first to have asked had they done it yet, and Kurenai has passed out with a blush. Quickly coming back to reality, Anko smiled even more before kissing Naruto's cheek before walking away, shaking her hips. Hurry up and become a genin already so you can bend me over. I had better be mounted and Ed senseless within the hour of you getting your headband, or I'm going to give you the worst case of blue balls in the history of ever. Naruto chuckled at the threat as he pulled on his shirt. Don't have to tell me twice, Haim. I had already planned to. Scene break. Naruto walked down the street to the academy, knowing he had plenty of time as he recalled the past 4 years that had been the best years of his life. First he had met his girlfriend, Anko-chan, who loved him and he loved her. He had found out why he had been treated the way he had, and he had grown stronger for it. He found out he was from 2 clans, which he planned on bringing back even if he didn't see it in his lifetime, and what made it better was that Anko didn't have a problem sharing him. She knew he was going to bring his clan back, and in order to do that he needed multiple wives. As much as she would want to attempt to fill those roles by herself, she knew she couldn't, but she would settle for being the head girl in his soon-to-be harem. Today he would become a shinobi, and he knew he would become one easy. He had spent the past 4 years in extreme training, under both Yugao sensei and Hayate sensei, and at his request they ran him into the ground each and every time. For course, due to his healing factor, he was fine the next morning after a good night's sleep and 6 bowls of ramen with side orders of dango. He had become extremely strong over the past 4 years, although he never nearly used all his strength, and had put measures in place to limit himself when out of training. These were the weight and restriction seals he had on his body since he started training all those years ago. He had now increased them all to the extreme. He found his body could adjust after just a few days. Akane had informed him it was his healing factor at work again. As he strained his muscles, they healed and became stronger for it. This resulted in him having to increase his weights every week to get the same results. Now he was currently walking around with 3,000 pounds on each of his limbs and then 5,000 on his chest. For a total of 17,000 pounds total. On top of that, he had also upped his restriction seal twice in the 4 years he was now walking around with it set at level 4, which was like pushing through quicksand, and he had kept these weight and restrictions on all the time, and never took them off in public, so no one really knows how strong and fast he is. He knew he could just up the weights more and increase the restriction seal again, but he had left it be as he didn't see the point in upping it, as he didn't need the extra training. He was getting plenty of that. In the past 4 years he had learned each of his clan's jutsu, and they were just as powerful as the first and had the same restrictions on them as it. When the Hokage had seen their strength, it looked as if he was going to have a heart attack. And Naruto could clearly see why. They were Uzumaki-style techniques. He could only use them about 20 times at full power before he reached his limit, while regular jutsu, he could fire off over 100 and not feel the drain. They were indeed extremely powerful. He could have easily learned more that were stored in his family's scroll in the Hokage's office, but he had opted against that and only learned the kenjutsu and taijutsu forms, thinking that if all the ninjutsu were as powerful as the first 5, then he still couldn't use them outside of training till he graduated, so there wasn't any point in learning them yet. As such, he had put more time into advancing his kenjutsu and taijutsu to the point where he could easily take on both his senseis at the same time for 3 hours straight, while he had his seals activated. Speaking of seals, Naruto's skill in them had increased as well. He had completed the next 3 scrolls in the series and was currently reviewing them before starting the 7th volume. Book 4. Intermediate 1 covered extra large explosive tags, small chakra suppression seals, medium chakra storage seals, and even specific nature chakra storage seals, C rank strengthening and reinforcement seals, and it covered how to link 4 seals together in an array for different results. After which the Hokage gave Naruto a gift which was Fuinjutsu Language 101. It explained the whole Fuinjutsu structure and helped Naruto to understand the seals better and allowed him to start experimenting with some of his own seals, under the supervision of course he was still learning. Book 5. Intermediate 2 covered extra large explosive tags, medium chakra suppression seals, extra large chakra storage seals, and large specific nature chakra storage seals, B rank strengthening and reinforcement seals, and it showed how to increase a seal array by 1, adding the extra features of showing how to create a prisoner capture scroll that would serve as easy means of transportation for any enemy shinobi or the like he captured alive on mission. One thing Naruto was happy to learn was he finally started to learn how to use barrier seals. Even if it was weak level ones, he quickly applied them to his apartment so that no civilian had a hope of entering. Book 6. Intermediate 3 covered XXXL explosive tags, which had the potential to blow up an entire building with just one of them, large chakra suppression seals. It had started on how to chain chakra storage seals as a way to increase their capacity, up to 3 seals at this point, along with XL specific chakra storage seals, and a rank strengthening and reinforcement seals, and it showed how to increase a sealing array by 1 for 6. Seeing Naruto had advanced so much, Hiruzen decided to give him one of the books his father had written, Fuinjutsu in Combat 101. Naruto read that book 100 times over by now, and it was the main reason he had yet to move on to the other scrolls. There was just so much in it to learn, and on top of that, he had begun his own side project in secret for his own combat seals, making him even more lethal, but at his current level the seals were still months if not years away from completion. He had found another book on trigger seals which he knew would be brilliant for his pranks that he could activate from afar and never get caught. There was also the section in the scroll that covered weak paralyzing tags that paralyzed its target for 5 minutes when applied and activated, which he knew would come in handy eventually. Naruto had even increased the level of his barrier strength, doubling its strength. Even Anko was caught off guard by it until she resorted to using her summons to break it. It was still weak but served his purpose, of deterring any disgruntled civilians. The rest of his skills had grown to match the rest of his body, as both his senseis had graded him to be at least high jonin on all his skills, except for genjutsu. He could never get that down even with all the time he put into his chakra control. The small amounts of chakra required in genjutsu are impossible for Naruto to draw out on their own. Needless to say, the Hokage had predicted that and so didn't count that into his training at all, although due to him possessing the Kyuubi in him he could never be put under genjutsu, which made up for his lack of skill in that area. Throughout the entire academy years, Naruto had been graded by both his academy instructors and his 2 senseis, and the Hokage had been watching during exam classes for any trickery when it came to the final results. After 5 attempts at screwing with Naruto, Mizuki had been removed from the class as the assistant and sent on near-permanent border patrol, which kept him out of the village 11 of every 12 months of the year, and Yugao had been asked to take over on her off time, which she had accepted. Naruto had only been too thrilled about that. And now Naruto was on his way to the academy for the graduation exam, which, if he remembered from his lessons, will consist of 3 parts, a written exam, a target range test, and finally performing the Academy 3 basic jutsu, and any 2 jutsu of your own for extra marks. Teams would then be decided based on the score sheets of the combined exams. You had to get about 50% to pass, which Naruto though was ridiculous, but there it was. He knew he could easily ace it all in his sleep. Naruto had taken his time to get to the academy today. Normally he would have just shunshin there to save time, but he just wanted to take his time today as he strolled through the gates of the academy with plenty of time to spare. Walking into the classroom, him and Kiba share a look and a smirk, knowing today would be a walk in the park for them both. With Naruto as a sparring partner, Kiba had doubled if not tripled his training. It had been a shocker seeing the training methods Naruto had used in private, and even more of a shock when Naruto had told him about his status as Jinchuriki, and Akane's gender, but he dare not let his shock show, lest both his older sister and mother kick H's for the act. Coming into the room he could feel more eyes on him than he had the first day he had entered. This had been mostly due to the fact that his status as last of the Uzumaki clan had been revealed 2 years ago, and it only had caused his popularity to soar through the roof due to the possibility of him falling in the CRA later in life. Flashback. Naruto leaned forward in his chair with his sketchbook and brush in hand as he worked through some new seal designs, with non-chakra mixed ink so that the seal wouldn't activate. He was still trying to work out the interior structure that would hold the array together and allowed him to swap between the different seals faster. It had been his private project for the past 3 months, but he was still having trouble with it. Iruka didn't mind Naruto working on his own stuff during class, as he would often toss Naruto random questions about what he was talking about out of the blue and Naruto would answer them fully without a problem. The blonde was an enigma that Iruka was happy to leave to his own inner working. That and he had been briefed that his new classroom assistant was one of Naruto's instructors outside of class, so if it was something he didn't already know she would call him to pay attention. Right now they were covering the basics of Genjutsu, and Iruka had been explaining about how it required delicate chakra control. When Shikamaru's hand went up, this was a slight shock because the Nara normally slept through class, as he passed every test with what Iruka suspected was carefully calculated marks, so it was strange to see him taking an interest in a lesson. Yes, Shikamaru-san, what is it? Shikamaru rubbed the back of his head lazily. I'm just curious, sensei, when will we be covering the more advanced stuff, like what Naruto mentioned on the first day of term last year? All we've covered for the past year and a half is the 3 jutsu basics, on top of some other troublesome lessons. When are we going to learn about the likes of Fuinjutsu? From what I've read, being able to make your own tags in the middle or before a fight might come in handy. This got Naruto's attention as both he and Yugao smirked. Iruka just sighed as the question. The academy only covers the 3 basics of being a shinobi, and other information you might need on the field. Such skills like Naruto's Kenjutsu and Fuinjutsu are both advanced skills that you can learn after you become a shinobi, or you take an interest and learn yourself through special channels with skilled instructors, Iruka explained. Then Sakura decided to voice her opinion, but then how does that blonde baka know all about Fuin whatever and not the rest of us, especially Sasuke-kun? What makes that baka so special? She said, wanting to yell, but her seal was active. Iruka frowned hearing Sakura insult Naruto. It's because Naruto has taken the time of his own to learn those skills to better himself for when he becomes a shinobi, skills that could very well save his life. Sakura, you would do best to take an example and do the same. Sakura was going to reply but thought better and bit her tongue before doing so. Sasuke, on the other hand, wasn't so clever. Whatever, they're useless skills developed by a bunch of worthless nobodies, as an excuse or attempt to fake real power. No wonder they aren't even taught in the academy. What a joke. Hearing that, Yugao's and Iruka's eyes widened, knowing who the creators of Fuinjutsu were, and were both about to reprimand Sasuke for the comment when a snap was heard from the back of the class where Naruto sat. Both instructors looked up to see the brush Naruto had been using was snapped in half under his grip, which had no doubt been a result of what Sasuke had said, as the emo had unknowingly just insulted the entire Uzumaki clan. Kiba looked to his friend, curious as to why Naruto suddenly just got so pissed off. Normally it would take something a lot more than Sasuke saying a few words to get under Naruto's skin, but at this time he wasn't aware of Naruto's status, and only 4 people were Yugao, Anko, Hayate, and the Hokage. Slowly Naruto set down the remains of the brush before taking a deep breath, to calm himself before raising his hand. Iruka blinked at the action before speaking. Yes, Naruto, is there something you would like to ask? Naruto nodded. Hi sensei, I would like to ask as to when the history of Uzushiogakure comes up in the history lessons and if it would be possible to have it now, for the benefit of my less informed peers. Iruka's eyes widened hearing that. Naruto. Are you saying that you? Iruka started but then stopped, seeing the look in Naruto's eyes. It was steadfast, he knew all right. Naruto did know. He had had his clones read up on Uzu, as he wanted to find out all he could about this mother's clan. He had even asked the Hokage to tell him what he knew and not leave anything out, and he had. Naruto knew everything, and that was why he was so infuriated by Sasuke's words. Iruka nodded understanding before closing the textbook and walking around his table and sitting on its front. Alright then, I suppose we can take a quick lesson detour. We're not supposed to cover this till next year, but considering the circumstances and the curiosity, we'll cover it now, Iruka said as he took off his flat jacket, much to every student's confusion. Shikamaru glanced at Naruto. What did this Uzu have to do with Fuinjutsu? The Nara may have been lazy, but one thing he didn't like was being left in the dark, and Naruto's reaction to Sasuke's words and now this mention of this village had piqued his interest. I don't suppose anyone here other than Naruto has even heard of Uzu, have you? Iruka asked aloud. There were a few turned heads, seeing if anyone had. That just made Naruto's hands clench in slight anger and Iruka sigh in regret. That's extremely regrettable, because during the First and Second Shinobi Wars, Uzu was Konoha's greatest ally, and it's because of Uzu that Konoha is still standing today. This got a few wide eyes in shock to think that Konoha owed such a debt to another village and they never even knew. Uzu was a relatively small village, about a week's travel outside of the walls of Konoha. Across the ocean, on a scale it was probably about 1/5 the size of Konoha, so it's no surprise some have forgotten it given its end, but its end is precisely the reason Konoha will never forget Uzu, Iruka said with a sad frown. It was in the middle of the Second Great War, when things were at their grimmest for the Konoha. We had been hit by multiple attacks, we had fended them off, but we were still getting our breath back after the last. When word came of a combined assault on the village from both Kumo and Iwa, we could only have lasted another 2 days of battery before we broke. We wouldn't have been ready in time when the attack hit. It was at this time that Uzu heard of the attack also. They were smaller, but their shinobi were some of the skilled in their arts anywhere in the elemental nations. Their skill in Fuinjutsu and their use in battle were unmatched. The entire village rallied around a single clan. That clan was the Uzumaki clan. At that moment every student's eyes widened, and everyone looked to Naruto, who didn't move, who just kept looking straight forward. Iruka took that as his cue to go on. The Uzumaki clan's roots in both Uzu and here in Konoha run deep. It was one of the 3 founding clans of this village, mentioned in both the same prestige as both the Senju and the Uchiha, Iruka said firmly. Sasuke's eyes widened. What? That dope is from a clan, and it has ties to mine. The Uchiha actually took interest, for half a second before rolling his eyes. A dead clan, a dead and worthless clan, they were lucky to be even spoken in the same breath as mine. In fact, the wife of the first Hokage was one Mito Uzumaki, if that rings any bells with anyone, which it should. Iruka said standing up. The Uzumakis held loyalty and family above all. When they heard of Konoha's need, they dispatched the main body of their shinobi forces to make the trip to Konoha to aid us. 150 Uzumaki shinobi, each a master of Fuinjutsu, along with different level of Kenjutsu, and extremely powerful elemental jutsu. This action, however, turned out to be their undoing, Iruka said as in a sad tone. Every eye opened and Iruka was about to continue when Naruto spoke out. It was a 2-pronged trap attack, Naruto said aloud, making everyone look to him. Only a third of the total attack was aimed at Konoha. It's a 7-day trip from here to Uzu. They were 5 days out when news reached of a force twice as big would be descending on Uzu in 4 days. and the smaller force would hit Konoha in a day and a half. Then Yugao spoke up. Most would have expected the 150 to turn and run back to defend their own village, but they didn't. Instead, they sent a single shinobi squad back to Uzu with plans on what to do. While the main force continued on to Konoha, they ran all day and all night and made it just in time to meet the smaller force head-on alongside our own shinobi. The battle was bloody and lasted for several straight hours, but as soon as the battle ended, forces of Uzu turned on their heels and started running again. Not a single Uzumaki entered the village. They didn't stop for thanks or rest, they turned and started running back to Uzu. But what was the point? Asked Choji. Uzu would have been destroyed by the time they got back. Everyone nodded in agreement, but Iruka shook his head. Everyone said that as well, that it couldn't be done, that Uzu was lost, but that didn't stop them. In what should have been a week trip on foot, they did in 2 days. There was a resounding gasp from the entire class. 7 days distance in just 2 days, that's insane. Naruto, your clan is kick-ass. Yelled Kiba, making Naruto smirk. Indeed they were. They met the larger force head-on exhausted. 100 plus Uzumakis versus 5,000 Iowa shinobi and 5,000 Kumo. Iruka said in a grim tone. There was silence in the entire class. That's 1 to 100 odds, there was no way. The battle lasted 3 days. There was a resounding gulp throughout the class. With their mastery of Fuinjutsu, their village's defenses, and the last of the shinobi, they fought the enemy head-on for the entire battle. 3 days and nights straight, such is the willpower and steadfast determination of an Uzumaki. When Konoha heard of the attack, we went to their aid as well and made it there in 4 days, arriving sadly too late to save Uzu. There was a cold air in the classroom hearing of their village's allies being lost, and they had been too late to help them. In the end, all we could do was chase off the remains of the scattered attacking forces from destroying Uzu further. The last 2,000 of them. Iruka said with a slight smirk. Everyone's eyes widened hearing that, and Naruto couldn't help but give a small grin. The 100 Uzumakis had demolished 8,000 enemy shinobi. Everyone listening was speechless at that level of strength. Then Iruka lifted up his flat jacket, showing the red swirl on the back. This is why every Chunin and Jonin flat jacket bears this red swirl crest. It is the symbol of the Uzumaki clan. Although theirs is white, we wear it in red in remembrance of our failure to help out allies like they did for us. Everyone remembered seeing the same mark on the back of Naruto coat above the kanji he had on it. Everyone thought it had just been a design, never a clan symbol. Then Ino raised her hand. But sensei, how do we know all this when you said our forces arrived too late? Iruka smiled a bit. It's because in the end the Uzumaki head, Mamoru Uzumaki, put a plan into place when they received word of the second attack. It was because of that plan that allowed the Uzumaki blood to live on. Iruka looked to Naruto. My Oji-sama sent the team with instructions to return to Uzu, and begin the evacuation of all the civilians in Uzu, and to use the seals in place to pull together all the clan resources into the special storage vault scroll and send it off with his daughter Maika-san, Kushina Uzumaki, the clan's next head. Using hidden passageways, she came out on the other side of Uzu just when the battle was starting. She hid for the entire time the battle was taking place, while the rest of the civilian populace was being evacuated, the whole future of Uzu resting on her shoulders. When the battle ended, she revealed herself to the Konoha forces, and they took her to safety, Naruto said with a slight smile. Yugao stepped forward. It was a special seal placed on the walls of Uzu and a special seal on Mamoru Uzumaki that transferred his memories of the battle to a storage scroll that Kushina opened, and that is how we know what happened. Sadly though, Kushina passed away during the Kyuubi attack 13 years ago, leaving Naruto here as the last of the once great Uzumaki clan, and rightful heir to Uzu. Naruto nodded to Yugao as he sat back down, taking out a new brush. Next time, Uchiha, think before you speak ill about someone's techniques. It was the Fuinjutsu of my clan that protects this village. It's my clan's seal that powers the protective walls of Konoha. It's my clan who designed the reinforcement seals on each and every house in Konoha to keep them standing in attacks. My clan who designed the matrix used in the medical seals used in the village hospital. without my clan's Fuinjutsu, without my clan period, Konoha wouldn't have lasted through the Second Shinobi War. Flashback ended. That day Kiba's respect for Naruto had gone even higher. It had also been later that day that Naruto had told Kiba about Akane, which only pissed him off, realizing why the civilians had been looking at Naruto like they had, and only served to make him want to rip their throats out for their stupidity. Of course, it was the next day that his fan base increased and that he had noticed that Ino had started blushing when she was around him like Hinata did. Naruto had been no fool, he knew what that meant, but he wasn't sure on either of their reasonings for their feelings, whether it was for him they love him or for the power it would bring their clans. Naruto wouldn't be making any move until he was sure. Naruto simply walked up and took his seat beside Kiba, giving the dog boy a bro fist with a grin. You ready to ace this, Naruto? Kiba grinned. Naruto smirked. Do you even have to ask? I've been ready for the past 4 years, and he wasn't kidding. Today he would become a shinobi and finally start his dream, that and get laid within an hour of getting his headband or lose his balls, by slow torture, courtesy of his slightly crazy girlfriend. After a few minutes, the door opened into the classroom and both Iruka and Yugao came in and stood at the front of the classroom. Welcome everyone. Today is the day that you all find out if over the past 4 years you have acquired enough skill to be called a genin shinobi of Konoha, Iruka stated proudly. As you all know, there are 3 parts to this exam: written, target, and practical, Yugao said aloud before lifting a stack of papers from the desk and starting to hand them out. This is the written exam. You will all have 1 hour to answer all the questions and show your methods in doing so. This exam is worth 40% of the overall marking upon graduation, Iruka said as Yugao finished handing out the papers face down on the desks and returning to beside Iruka. When we tell you, you may turn over your exam papers and begin, Yugao said, putting her hands behind her back. Good luck to you all. Iruka smiled as he looked at the clock as the second's hand came full. Begin. Everyone turned over their papers, and immediately Naruto knew something was up. As he read through each of the first questions, there was no way in hell a genin could answer them, but then a smirk came across Naruto's face and he looked to Yugao, who had the same smirk. Tricky sensei. Very tricky. This looks more like a jonin exam than a genin one. I'm still going to ace it though, Naruto thought before looking back down and starting. 35 minutes later, Naruto stood up and lifted his paper before walking down the row and handing it to Yugao. Finished, sensei? It was easy. Yugao smirked at Naruto. That's good to hear, Naruto-kun. Since you finished early, you can wait outside. Everyone else will be along shortly. With a nod, Naruto walked out the door, a smirk on his. Walking to the new target area they had installed after Naruto's demonstration first day, he sat down and closed his eyes, deciding to take a quick snooze. The new range had been specially designed so that it could handle even B-rank jutsu being fired down it. The curved wall at the far side was 5-foot thick reinforced concrete with multiple reinforcement seals. It was curved at a slight angle so as to catch any stray jutsu and spread out the energy on impact. The range had also been increased. It could now accommodate a range of 70 feet and the targets had motors in them to move slightly with the older students. After another 20 minutes, the rest of the class came out and Naruto and Kiba smirked at each other as the kunai and shuriken crates were set down. Alright, now unlike your first day here, this isn't just about hitting the target. Now that you all learned where the most vulnerable points of the body are, would anyone care to recite them if they remember? No bonus points, just a question. Iruka asked, looking the class over. Sakura raised her hand. 8 points, larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, and the heart. Naruto finished for her, earning a glare from the muted banshee. Iruka nodded. Very good, both of you. The way this passed of the test is marked, is accuracy. You will pick and call out your targets before throwing. You can choose either kunai or shrunken for your throws. You will be graded on accuracy and power, and whether or not each shot is at lethal blow level. To make things harder, the targets will be at 70 feet and will be moving. This is what it takes to be a shinobi. You can choose as many targets as you want. Obviously, the more you chose, the higher your score possibility, but for each you miss, you lose extra points. This is also about knowing your own limitations. Don't overestimate your own abilities. Doing so on a mission will cost you your lives, Yugao said with no break in her voice. Once that was said, she stepped out of the way and the target portion of the exam commenced. Shino chose 5 targets and hit all 5. Choji chose 4 and hit all 4. Kiba stepped up confident, calling 6 and hitting all 6. All his training with Naruto had been paying off. Shikamaru, being Shikamaru, called 4 and got 4. Sai was next, calling only 3 targets and hitting them with ease. Naruto could tell he was holding back but didn't say anything. Next, Hinata was up, scoring 6 for 6. Ino after her with 6 for 6 also. Sakura barely pulled off her 3. Sasuke had been smug and called 7 and hit 7, due to his hours of training and brooding. Until it was finally Naruto's turn to throw. Walking up, he had the box of kunai beside him and he looked down the range. The wind was light, the temperature was mild for the time of day, there was no headwind to mess with his trajectory. He just smirked as he reached for the box, taking out the kunai and setting them on the bench in front of him. 8 points: larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, and the heart, Naruto called out, making some go wide-eyed at what he was saying. Naruto was going for all 8, in the whole of the Academy's history that had only ever been achieved twice, once 9 years ago by Itachi Uchiha, the pride of the Uchiha clan, who was said to be the next Madara, but he ultimately turned out to be their downfall when he killed them all except for his little brother Sasuke in one night before leaving the village. He was now classed as an S-class nuke nin to be killed on sight. The other had been 5 years before that, by Kakashi Hatake, who was now named Kakashi the Copy Ninja and was an Anbu captain before retiring to Jonin after a multiple successful missions and years. Most would have considered that amazing, but the reality of Anbu missions is they are dark and bloody. Yugao had told Naruto that most Anbu break after 5 missions at most, or after 2 years of the lesser duties. Kakashi had survived 10 times that and had been Anbu for 5 years. She respected the man, and as did Naruto, though they had never met. And now here was Naruto trying to be the third in the Academy books to take all 8 points. Stop trying to act cool, Baka, we all know you can't beat Sasuke-kun, said Sakura, desperately wanting to yell, but with her seal active she couldn't. Of course she had a few supporters who were still die-hard Sasuke fangirls, but the majority of the class just glared at her. For all 4 years Naruto had aced everything. He was currently the top of the class, with Sasuke being second, and it was a well-known fact, but Sakura just refused to believe it, claiming every day he was cheating somehow, and it was the fact that it was that way that pissed Sasuke off even more, that the dope was somehow beating him. Iruka looked at Naruto. Are you sure, Naruto? He asked, only to get a nod from Naruto. Yugao smirked. Let's see if you can do it. I know you've been practicing this for a while now, but let's see if you can put it off. Looking down range, Naruto took his breath as his target started moving. He grabbed his first 3 kunai and launched. Both lungs and heart hit hard as the metal of the kunai embedded into the wood. Wasting no time, Naruto grabbed another 2 kunai and launched them a few seconds apart. The first had more force, it literally spun the target as it hit the liver, as the second ripped through the neck area, showing the jugular was taken out. With the target still spinning, Naruto grabbed the rest of his kunai and threw them. The first whipped the head back as it pierced the underside of the larynx, as 2 other took out the kidneys. 3 other kunai shot wide, making Sakura and Sasuke smirked, thinking Naruto had missed, but all 3 kunai ricocheted off the back wall before hitting the spinning target, hitting the spin both at the lower portion of the back and at the base of the neck, as the third ripped through the side of the target's neck where the subclavian artery was located, and all before the target hit the floor. Naruto stood up, in case anyone missed that, in order: both lungs, heart, liver, jugular, larynx, kidneys, and finally both upper and lower spine and subclavian artery, penetration average of 3 inches. Diagnosis: target will bleed out in 50 seconds if treatment isn't given. he will be paralyzed from his neck down and will require multiple surgeries if he survives, which is unlikely given the one to the heart would have killed him and he would have drowned with the blood pouring into his lungs or the poisons from his liver now seeping into his other organs. Total diagnosis, no hope in hell, he'll be getting up from that, Naruto finished with a smirk. He turned around to see the entire class in utter amazement. He had done all that in under 5 seconds, accuracy and precision, and then calling his hits in the order, which was insane. Naruto just looked to Yugao and Iruka with a smirk. Yugao just shook her head with her own smirk, holding in a slight chuckle, while Iruka was doing his best impression of a fish. Calming down, Yugao gave Iruka a little shake to snap him out of it before they all went back inside to perform the last part of the exam. The entire class were out in the hallway, lined up outside the door, going in and coming out one at a time. Naruto, Kiba and Shikamaru got bored waiting, but luckily Naruto had brought a pack of cards and they were playing for an assortment of things: kunai, shuriken, smoke bombs and the like. Naruto was even tossing in some of his fuinjutsu tags. He could make more any time he wanted, and the three of them just kept playing while they waited. It was Naruto's turn next. Sasuke just entered the room, but a couple of seconds later there was a large roar of fire and intense heat from inside the room, but it died down quickly, which piqued Naruto's interest. Finally, it was Naruto's turn and he entered the room just after the Sasuke came out, headband in hand with a smirk. "Beat that loser," he said with a smug grin on his face. He walked in and both Yugao and Iruka smiled at him as he stood in front of them. Just out of curiosity, senseis, what jutsu did Sasuke perform as his bonus jutsu? Naruto asked as Yugao frowned. He performed a low-level Kasai Hakushu, but it looked like it drained him. He had to take a chakra pill right after to keep from passing out, Yugao said with a frown. Naruto clenched his fist. That bastard, that was a clan jutsu. Oh, I'm going to raise hell for this, Naruto thought before nodding, a slight pissed-off look on his face. I see, well, let's continue, I'll deal with that at the end. Yugao nodded. Okay Naruto-kun, you have to perform the academy standard jutsu, henge, kawarimi and bunshin. Extra points will be awarded for attention to detail in the henge, substitution distance, and the number of clones you can create. Begin when you're ready. Naruto nodded before bursting into smoke, only to be replaced by a perfect Iruka henge. Iruka got up and looked the henge over and saw that Naruto had everything spot on, the number of bandages around his leg holding his kunai holster in place, even the correct color of socks, and the blade he kept in his boot. It was a perfect henge. Very good Naruto, full marks, Iruka said, pleased at Naruto's work, but what happened next was a shock. The henge patted Iruka's back when he was standing up from the inspection. It was solid, not an illusion, and what really caught him off was what he heard. Thanks, Iruka-sensei. Naruto spoke, only sounding exactly like Iruka. It was a perfect copy. Naruto, how did you? Iruka started but stopped when Naruto dispersed the henge with a smirk. That would be my own jutsu. It's been called the perfect henge. It's to do with my density of chakra, what makes my henges solid, and then extra chakra to the vocal cords to change the voice slightly. We suspect it's because of my tenon, Naruto said, making Iruka look at him wide-eyed. Naruto, you know about the seal? Iruka asked in shock. Naruto nodded. Since the beginning of the academy, and don't worry, Hokage Gigi knows. He was the one who told me, and Yugao-sensei was present when he did so. After that a lot of things happened and she and another, who I still can't say because the mission is still ongoing, began training me, as you already know. Oh, okay then. Best to get back to the exam then. Substitution next, Iruka said, getting past the fact that Naruto had known the supposed secret the whole time he was at the academy. Naruto nodded before disappearing into a plume of smoke, replacing himself with the practice dummy that he had brutally destroyed out at the target range that was a good 150 feet away and 2 floors below. Both sensei marked down full marks with creativity. After a few moments, Naruto had returned to the room and the target dummy had been taken out of the room. Alright Naruto clones, and try to keep it to the low double digits, no need to fill the building, Yugao said with a slight smirk. Iruka looked at her confused, But then it hit home when Naruto performed the cross hand sign and then exploded into smoke, revealing all the chairs and the desks behind Naruto filled with clones, and not just any clones, solid shadow clones. Iruka blinked, rubbed his eyes and blinked again before sighing, should have seen that coming. Alright Naruto, now one jutsu of your own choosing for extra credit, not that you need it. Iruka smirked. Naruto pondered for a second, can we do this out in the yard? I'm wanting to show off, and doing this in here would probably blow up the building. Naruto reasoned as his clones dispelled. Iruka sighed and Yugao giggled. Sure, why not? Iruka said before tossing him the headband. May as well take that, you've already aced this test and made everyone else in the class look like, as Kiba put it on the first day of term, chumps. Naruto grinned. Great, I'll meet you out there. I just need to give Gigi a heads up, Naruto said before disappearing in a leaf shunshin. Scene break.